Mastering select queries in Microsoft Access is key for anyone who wants to manage and analyze data efficiently. Select queries allow you to access just the information you need, helping streamline your database tasks and improve your reporting. This skill is essential for effective database management and developing applications, making it a crucial tool for your projects. The following video is Lesson 9 from my complete Microsoft Access Beginner Level 1 course. It's absolutely free. It's about 4 hours long. If you enjoy this video, you can access the entire 4-hour course for free on my website and on my YouTube channel. You'll find a link down below. Now, let's start the lesson. In Lesson 9, we're going to learn how to build customer queries. We'll see how to add tables to your query, add fields from the table to the query. We'll see how to run the query. Then we'll learn how to sort by multiple fields and add query criteria. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to work with queries. Now, we have the same mission that we had in the last lesson. The boss wants to see a list of all the customers from New York sorted by last name. More importantly, I want to create a query to do this so I can pull it up at a moment's notice at any time in the future without having to redo all the steps. So come up top and click on Create, and right here you'll see a Queries section. There's a Query Wizard and Query Design. Now the Query Wizard is okay for building some of the more advanced queries, but right now we're just going to build a simple query, and I want to teach you how to do it from scratch. So click on Query Design. You'll see a blank query window opens up right here. This is Query 1. And over on the right-hand side, you'll see Add Tables. This pane appears. If you don't see Add Tables over here, click on this little Add Tables button. Now, a query can get its data from a table. Here we only have the customer T in our database. Other queries, which we don't have any. Or you can get your data from links. Now, links are linked tables. That's basically tables in other databases. We don't cover this for a while, so don't worry about links right now. So let's go over here and click on Tables. So the only table we have in our database is our customer T, so make sure that's selected. Then come down here and click on Add Selected Tables. You'll see that brings the table over into the query right over here. Later on, when we have more tables in our database and we've built some other queries, we can actually make queries based on multiple tables and or other queries. We'll talk about that in more advanced classes when we get into the Expert series. But now we're done adding tables, so I can close the Add Tables pane right there with that X. That gets rid of that. Now notice how the ribbon has changed since I'm building a query. It says Query Tools, Design, and there's all kinds of new buttons on here. Make Table, Append, Update, Crosstab. What's all this stuff? We'll talk about this stuff in the future. But for today, we're going to make a simple select query. This is where you select data from a table. So the table or tables, in our case just one, that are part of the query will show up here in this big area. And down here in these columns will be the fields that we want to see. Now, I will tell you that this is not intuitive. This is one of the stranger things you're going to see in Access. All right, this interface can be confusing, so it'll take a little while to get to know how it works. But it's not that bad once you get used to it. Now, up here in this table, you'll see the different fields. First name, last name, company name, and so on. We can make this bigger by simply grabbing and dragging the edge. Okay? We add fields to the query by clicking on them and dragging them down to these columns down here. So, let's say I want to see first name and last name in this query. So, click on first name, and then click and drag it and drop it right down here in that first column. See that? Now do the same thing with last name. Click and drag and drop it right there in that second column. So now your query consists of the customer table showing the first name and the last name. It's that easy. That's all you have to do to see a list of first name and last names. Now to see the results of your query, to see the actual data, come over here on the ribbon and click on the Run button. And there you go. There's all the customers in our customer table displayed in this query. You've got a list exactly as you asked for it. There's first name and last name, and that's it. Now, it's not sorted yet, and we're seeing all of the customers from all of the states, but that's exactly what we told Access to give us. We haven't put a filter on, and we haven't sorted it yet. Now, this list is going to be for phone numbers, So let's say I want to add phone number to this list. Let's go back to design view. Click on the little design icon over here. That'll put us back in design view. Let's find the phone number field right there. Click and drag and drop it in column 3. And now let's run the query again. And there we go. There's every first name, last name, and phone number in our customer table. All right, back to design view. Let's add credit limit to the query. Now, here's a trick. Instead of clicking and dragging, you can just double click. Watch this. Click, click, and there it goes. It'll automatically add to the next open column in your query. That's a little faster than clicking and dragging. All right, run the query again. There we go. There's all the credit limits. And now the boss sees this. He's like, wait a minute. I don't want that. I don't want credit limits showing up in the query. Get rid of that. Get that out of there. Okay, how do we delete something out of the query? We'll go back to design view. All right, this is a little tricky. Take your mouse and move it right there over the top of that column. See, I've got that downward pointing black arrow. Click right there. That selects that column. And now press delete on the keyboard. That's how you delete something out of the query. That's how you delete a field from the query. All right, so if I accidentally added num employee, right, come over here, find that spot, not this spot. This allows you to drag that little barrier window up there. See that little side? That's not the spot you want to be on. All right, you got to be right there. Okay, that little black arrow. And if you click on it, you actually lose the black arrow. See, come over here, you click, that selects that column. And you can actually select multiple columns by clicking and dragging like that. See that? But we just want the one. So click right there. Okay, now let it go, and now press delete on the keyboard. That's how you select and delete a column out of your query. Okay, now how do I sort this information? Well, if you're in Datasheet view, you can apply sorts. If you go back to Datasheet view, or if you run the query, it's the same thing, by the way. Going to Datasheet view, okay, or running the query, if it's a select query, and we'll talk about these different types of queries in future classes, but this is the same thing. It just switches over to Datasheet view. Now, you can perform these sorts up here like we learned about with tables, but these aren't permanent, and they're easily changed by other users. What we want to do is apply a permanent sort, and in a few minutes, a permanent filter, to the query itself in design mode. So go back to design mode. Notice down here there's a row that says sort. Okay, right there, sort. So click inside the sort box under the first name, and you'll see a little drop-down box appears, or a little combo box. Click on that. We got ascending, descending, not sorted. Pick ascending, and now run the query. And look at that. It's sorted now by first name. Okay, let's go back to design view. Now, let's add a second sort by last name. Ready? Drop this down and pick ascending. And now run it. And, okay, it's not quite what I want. All right, notice I've got two Joes in here, and they're now sorted, right? First name, then last name. But usually when you do a sort, you want it last name, then first name. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, in order to do that, we have to rearrange these columns. Access queries will sort left to right. So whatever you want sorted first has to be on the left side. So how do we do that? Well, we just learned how to select the column, right? Move right there, get that black arrow, click, let it go, take your hand off the mouse, okay? And now notice I've got a white pointer arrow right there. Now, click and drag, see that line? And put it right there. That's how you move a column. All right, let's practice. Let's move phone out in front. Ready? Click, let it go. All right, now I can move my mouse freely. Now grab that same spot now, click and drag to the left. See that? All right, but I don't want phone out there. I'm going to put phone back where it was. This is practice. We're practicing, right? All right, so click right there. Let it go. Click and drag to the right. See the little line moving around? That's where it's going to drop, right? There's where you want to drop it. Okay, so that's how you move these things around. And now if I run it, now it's sorted by last name and then first name. We got two Smiths there, right? Smiths. We got two Smiths there. Little tongue twister. We have two Smiths there, Joe and Peter, and they are now sorted. Last name, first name. I'm surprised the first one I got in here is a J. That's like half the alphabet missing. Okay. Back to design view. Okay, now it's time to save this query. So I'm going to hit Control S on my keyboard for save. Control S as in save. All right. Query name. Let's call this customer Q, my customer query, and then hit OK or press enter. Now notice it's over here in my navigation pane. There's customer Q. Now I can close this query. All right. Go about my business. Do what I want to do. Go have lunch. All right. Go watch some more of my videos. And then when you come back later and you open this guy up by double-clicking on it, there's your query. Exactly as you saved it. Right? You got the fields you want. You got the sort order that was in there. That's the benefit of queries. You can make different queries to display data in different ways, and this way you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. All right? Unlike in Excel where you got to resort this and change that and move this around, in Access you can have multiple different queries to view your data in different ways. More importantly, you can set these up for people that don't know Access. Right? If they want to see a specific set of data, like we're going to see in a second, how to do a list of customers from New York with, let's say, a credit limit under $1,000. All right, you could set up a special query for people, and all they have to do is open up the query, and there's the data that they need. They don't have to know how to use Access. They don't know how to build queries, so you build it for them and just give them a link to it. And later on in future classes, we'll build full menu systems where you just have them click on a button, and then there's their query. Okay, but we're not done yet. The boss said that he only wants to see customers from New York. So let's go back to Design View. All right. Now, to filter based on a field, you have to have that field in the query. So find State, double-click on it, and now it's over here. Run the query now, and you'll see there's all the states. Okay. Back to Design View. Which, by the way, you can also get there by right-clicking here on the title bar of the query. And you can switch between Design View, SQL View, and Datasheet View. All right, there's Datasheet View. SQL View is a little more advanced. I cover this in my more advanced classes. That's basically a programming language to write queries. It's very, very powerful, and we will cover that in future lessons. So now we have the state in our query. There it is. All right, we know about the sort row. We'll talk about show in a minute. Find this guy here that says criteria. All right, so come into the criteria row underneath state, and here's where you're going to put your filter or the criteria for this particular field. So I'm going to type in New York, all right, NY, and then press enter or tab. Now, notice that Access put quotes around it. I'll zoom in there so you can see it. Notice it put quotes around it. In Access, whenever we're dealing with text values, that's called a text string. All right, a string of characters, and we have to make sure we put them inside of quotes. Now, usually Access realizes that's a text string and puts the quote there for us, but keep that in mind. You shouldn't always rely on Access to do that. So I just showed you as an example, but you should type in quote New York quote, okay, every time you put in your criteria there, if it's a text string. Sometimes you'll have numbers, sometimes you'll have currency values or dates. Those don't get text strings. All right, we'll see that as we go along. Okay, so now that we have our criteria there under state, let's run the query again, and look at that. Now I'm only seeing customers from New York. All right, so I've got it sorted, and I've got it properly filtered with criteria. And that is now a permanent part of this query. All right, notice there's no filter on here. It says no filter. That's in the design of the query, in the SQL underneath it. Okay, now I want to save this query so I can pull it up again at any time in the future. But don't just hit Control S or click on the little floppy disk icon over there. Otherwise, you'll overwrite the original customer queue. I don't know how many times I've done that. I've done it a million times, especially with Word or Excel, right? I've got like a Word template, like a document that I use, and I don't have it set as an actual template, so it's read-only. Right, I'll open it up, and I'll start making changes. I'll hit Control S, save, and oop, I just overwrote my old document. All right, happens all the time. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to go to File and Save As. Okay? Save As. Now you can save the whole database. That's not what I want. I want to save this object. Save Object As. Okay? Hit the Save As button. And this will allow you to save customer queue to, right, copy of customer queue or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Customer New York queue. All right? Remember, singular. I try to keep all my objects, table names, query names, field names, singular if possible. Someone actually called me out that notes is technically plural. Yeah, I know, but I've been doing notes forever. So, yeah, notes is my exception. All right, hit OK. And now this query has been saved as customer New York queue. Now, if I close this guy and open up the other one, there's the original query, right? And I can open up the customer New York queue now, too. There's both of them. They overlap each other like that. See that? All right, just move them around if you want to. All right? You know how to use Windows, right? If not, go take my Windows class. We're not going to cover Windows stuff here. You can even open up the table if you want to. Get them all open up here. Okay? Close that, close that, close that. All right, let's say in addition to New York, we also do business in Pennsylvania. So I want a similar query, but I want customers from Pennsylvania. Now, I know ahead of time I'm going to be making changes to this query, and I don't want to have to open it up and then go File, Save As, Save Object. Let's just copy this guy ahead of time, right? Click on it, go Control-C, Control-V, right? Copy, paste, my keyboard shortcuts. Control-C, Control-V. All right, change the name. We'll call this one Customer PA, like that. And then hit OK. Okay, now let's open Customer PA up. And, oh, okay, it still says New York. Why is that? Well, I haven't actually changed the query yet, have I? Let's go to Design View, right-click, Design View. Let's change our criteria to PA. Save it, Control-S. Save on the keyboard, right? And now let's run it. And wait a minute. There's nobody in there. Well, I don't have any customers from Pennsylvania. Let's open up the customer table and make sure. There's my states. Let's see. No Pennsylvania. Okay. Now, let's go in and cheat. Let's change a couple customers and make them from Pennsylvania, just for class. All right, so go back into customer table. All right, let's change this guy here. Let's make him from Pennsylvania. And let's change this guy here, Pennsylvania. All right, close the customer table. And what's going on? Why did my query update? Well, it's important to note that a query will not update its records unless you either close it and reopen it or click the Refresh All button. Okay, if you hit the Refresh All button, it'll reload its results, or you can close it and then reopen it again. Okay? It won't just update itself if it's sitting there open. This usually isn't a problem if you're the only person using the database, but sometimes if you have a multi-user database, and we're going to get into that in future classes, you got multiple people working on the same set of records at the same time, someone might change something and it doesn't appear to change right away on your screen because you have to refresh the data. Either close it and reopen it or hit the refresh button. Okay? So if someone says to you, yeah, I just changed the record a few minutes ago, and you're not seeing the changes, close it and reopen it, or hit the refresh button. Okay, we'll talk a lot more about this when we get into multi-user databases, and that's coming up a lot later in the expert classes. Okay? Now, another thing that is important to remember is that queries themselves do not have any data in them. This is just a way to look at data that's stored in the tables. All right, let me repeat that. All of the data in your database is stored in your tables. This is just 3 different ways to look at this set of data. The queries themselves have no data in them. Okay, makes sense? The query is just showing you what's stored in the table. It's not a copy of the data. All right, it's just a live view of the data in the table. Now, on the other hand, keep in mind that this is a live view of data in the table. And if you change it in the query, it will also change in the table. So let's say, for example, I come in here and I change these people to Florida. Okay? Notice I'm able to edit them here. Now, if I hit the Refresh All button or close this and reopen it, look what happens. They go away. Why? Because that's live data. I just changed those people, all right, to Florida. There's one of them. I remember that one from Jamestown. Janestown, right? Okay. This one up here, too. These were the Pennsylvanians. Now they're from Florida. All right. I'll put this one back to Pennsylvania. How's that? And Jamestown should be Texas. Okay. Close that. And now open up Pennsylvania again. There's your one person from Pennsylvania. So keep those 2 things in mind. 1, queries themselves have no data in them. They're just showing you data that's stored in the tables. And 2, any changes you make while you're viewing a query get saved in the table. Now, can you make queries read-only so that people don't have the ability to change the data? Yeah, you can. Personally, I would prefer giving your coworkers forms or reports to work with instead of having them work directly in your queries. We'll see how forms and reports work in just a few minutes. So now we have two queries from two different states. What if you wanted to have a query for each state? Would you have to make 50 separate queries? Well, the answer there is no. There is something called a parameter query where you can make it so the user types in the state when the query is run. That's a little more advanced. I cover parameter queries in Access Beginner Level 5. I do also have a tip video on that. I'll put a link down below in the links section if you want to learn how to do that now. It's a little more advanced, but it's not too bad. Remember, today we're just learning the basics of query design. We've got to walk before we run, right? But my students ask this stuff every time I teach this class, so I just want to let you know that, yes, it's possible. And if you really, really want to learn how to do it now, go check out the links down below. You want to find the parameter query video. Another popular question I get asked all the time is, what is this little asterisk up here, that little star? Well, the star is so that you can add all of the fields to the query without having to bring them all in individually. All right, so if you double click on that star, for example, you'll see it says customer T dot star. That says all of the fields. Now, we have to have first name and last name in here individually because we want to put sorting on them. Or if you have the state field in here to do a criteria, you have to add that in. But if you just want to see all the rest of the fields, just bring down the star. Now when you run it, you'll see there's all the rest of the fields. That's really handy if you want to have them all in the query and you've got lots and lots of fields like we have up here. Okay? Another thing I get asked is, what are these show boxes for? Well, if you don't want to see a particular field, even though you have to have it in the query, you can hide it. For example, let's get rid of the customer T.star. And remember earlier, I accidentally brought in the credit limit. Okay? Now, if I run this, you can see everybody and their credit limits. Let's say the boss wants to see a phone list of everybody who has a credit limit of less than $1,000. Maybe you're going to be calling them and see if they want to upgrade their credit limit or whatever, okay? So in the criteria row down here, I can put a criteria in of less than 1,000. Now, we're going to do a lot more with all these different types of criteria in future classes, but I'm just giving you a sneak preview, okay? If I run this now, you'll see everybody in this list now is under 1,000, okay? But you might not want your employees seeing what their actual credit limit is. So you can come in here and hide that column. So now when you run this, you know this is a list of everybody that has less than $1,000 credit limit, but you don't know what the actual credit limit is. All right, it's a little more discreet. Okay? So that's what the show box is for. Now there are tons of things you could do with queries. I literally just scratched the surface today. You can make queries at multiple tables. You can make queries that prompt the user for information, like I mentioned before with the parameters. You can make queries that edit records in a table. Make table queries will create whole new tables based on other sets of data. Append queries can add records onto a table. You take them from one table to another. Update queries change information. Crosstab queries look like little spreadsheets. Delete queries delete information. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff you can do with queries. If I put together all of my query lessons from all my different courses, I probably got hundreds of hours of stuff on just queries. So this is literally just to give you a taste of what queries can do. This is the basics of a select query. Now, a lot of books are written that way. Books are usually written in more of like a reference type format where they teach you everything there is to know about tables first, and then they teach you everything there is to know about queries next. I don't do that. I don't go depth first. I go breadth first with my teaching. I'll teach you a little bit of this, then a little bit of that, like a little bit of tables, a little bit of queries, a little bit of forms. All right, then in the next class, we'll go over a little bit more with tables, a little bit more with queries. I think you'll learn better that way, right? Tutorials aren't really designed to be reference material. Okay, this is, I want you to watch this and apply a little bit of this lesson, then a little bit of that lesson. All right, and it'll stick in your brain a little better, okay? Some people learn better with books. If you like book learning, then great, go buy a book. There's lots of books I recommend. The Access Bible series is really good. I like those. Okay, but lots of people always ask me, like, well, why didn't you cover this and this and this and this about queries? Because I'm only giving you a little bit, all right? We're already over 20 minutes for this lesson, so now we're going to move on to something else. We're going to do forms in the next lesson, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about forms. You want to learn more about queries? I got tons of query lessons on my website. Go to my site, search for queries, you'll find all kinds of stuff. Okay? But I give you a little bit at a time so you digest it. Now I'm going to give you some form stuff, then some report stuff. Okay? All right, so in the next lesson, we're going to learn how to build a form to make a nice user-friendly interface for our end users. Thanks for watching my lesson on queries. This was just one of many lessons in my 4-hour Microsoft Access beginner course. If you'd like to learn more or watch the entire course for free, you can find links in the description down below the video. It's available on both my website and my YouTube channel. Thanks again for tuning in, and as always, live long and prosper. I'll see you next time.